Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's meetup. I hope everybody enjoyed their ArcGIS or their GIS day yesterday. On today's agenda, Scott, Allison, and Billy from Cityworks will be providing an overview of public engagement maps and apps. As a reminder, we'll be recording and posting this meetup on meetups.com. During the meetup, if you would like to make comments or chat with other participants, then please use the chat panel. However, if you'd like to submit a question for the team to answer, then please submit it through the Q&A panel. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Scott.
Okay, thanks, Heather, and thanks everyone for joining us today. And a special thank you to Billy Lang from Cityworks, who's joining us as well too. Today, Allison and I wanted to talk about a whole collection of public engagement maps and apps that are available with the ArcGIS for Local Government solution. So we're going to start off with a brief introduction and then really dive into a whole series of public engagement maps and apps that are available for you today. And our goal today is not necessarily to go deep into any one individual application, but more importantly, probably to help you understand the collection of public engagement offerings that are available. And so we're going to spend or take a whirlwind tour of different solutions that are available. And certainly if you have questions, as Heather said, don't hesitate to stop us, or certainly we can have a more detailed dialogue with you about a specific solution even after the meetup as well. And then we'll close today with kind of a roadmap. Where are we going and what are we working on now, and how are we continuing to evolve the public engagement solutions that we have. So to get us started, I want to provide a little bit of context. As we think about kind of public engagement in the local government solution, we really think about a continuum of offerings that are available for you guys to really help you promote transparency and increase accountability in your organization. And today we're going to show you a set of maps and apps that are available to really help you share public information. And that may be as simple as providing what historically were maybe PDFs or hard copy maps, or just direct access to the public information that you guys maintain. We're also going to show you some patterns that help you really provide your own set of locators to help people discover resources and other amenities that are available in the community, and ultimately begin to tell stories. So we'll focus initially on those solution offerings that really help you provide information to the public. And as we kind of move up that continuum, then what you'll see is I'll then hand it over to Allison, and she'll talk a lot about how we've been evolving the solution and the apps that are available within ArcGIS to really help you guys engage the public and use the public as a sensor. And ultimately, there's some really great opportunities for you guys to use the solution offerings to gather sentiment and solicit feedback, and list participation, and even begin to take action on that information that's coming from citizens in your community or the general public. And that's really where Billy will step in and show us how we, through a partnership with Cityworks, you guys can leverage your investment in ArcGIS to gather that feedback, and ultimately then leverage your maintenance management systems to take action and improve accountability. And finally, kind of the last piece of the public engagement strategy with ArcGIS that we're not going to spend a whole lot of time today talking about, but I certainly want to mention, is the ArcGIS Hub. This is a new product offering we announced at the user conference this year and released to the general public about a week ago. And ultimately what ArcGIS Hub allows you to do is to take these public engagement offerings even further and begin to enlist the general public and your community as named users within an ArcGIS organization, and begin to collaborate more directly with them, and really use ArcGIS as a way to build a public engagement platform for your organization. So as I mentioned, today we're going to show you this kind of continuum of offerings that are available. There's lots of different solutions that you can begin to leverage in your organization, and we'll certainly be able to take questions as we go. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in to kind of some of the solutions that are available to help you share public information. And quite frankly, this is the most popular form of public engagement we see in government agencies, and it's everything from kind of static maps to more interactive applications that allow people to gather information that you maintain and publish for your organization. And we see some typical patterns in these applications. They're what we might call show me maps and apps that just present government information to citizens or the general public. There's also collections of apps that are available that help people find things around a specific location. You might think of this as kind of the consumer mapping experience for your authoritative government information, right? Where I pick up my device or I enter in a location on my browser, and it gives me things that are near that location and ultimately helps me get directions, whether that be driving or walking to that location. And finally, we'll show you a solution, some solutions really with story maps for ArcGIS that help you tell a story, right? That really help you kind of present dynamic map information and other information around that to educate the community and kind of control the narrative, so to speak. So as I mentioned, there's lots of different examples, right? Everything from the park locator, which is one of our more popular solution offerings, tax parcel viewer, which provides assessment and tax information to citizens in your community, and even more recent examples like the capital improvement plan, which is a story map that allows you to essentially present a map-based representation of your local CIP, and election polling places and election results, which are some of our more popular solution offerings as well. And one of the patterns we've seen over the last couple of years emerge is that not only are organizations publishing these show me or kind of public information applications, but they're also complementing that with the actual data that drives these applications in an open data site. And there's lots of examples of how ArcGIS Open Data can support these more focused application experiences. And even we'll talk a little bit today about some organizations who have developed kind of an integrated destination using those two capabilities within ArcGIS. So let me just jump out of the slides here and just kind of take you guys on a tour of some of the public information app solutions we have. And I want to start with a simple configuration of web app builder for ArcGIS that's called Demolition Tracker. So this is a very simple way for people within the community to kind of discover demolitions that are near a given location, right? Oops, I don't want to search for Franklin, Tennessee. I want to search for Franklin Avenue in Naperville, Illinois. Let's do that. And once you find that location, right, you can begin to discover different demolitions that are in and around that location. So as I zoom out here a bit, right, I can see contracted, planned, and completed demolitions, and at any point in time begin to drill into each one of these demolitions to provide that information. So rather than just providing the raw data, I can provide a sense of place and a sense of context for that information that citizens may be interested in a very simple and straightforward way. So that's Demolition Tracker. Kind of moving on and continuing on, the next solution I want to show you is My Tax Distribution. So this is all about providing access to tax information. And so when citizens in your community pay their taxes, where are those tax revenues going? And as I search for an individual address, it brings up the parcel for that address, for that site address, and gives me the distribution of all of those tax collections to the special districts in my community, or even the general fund as well too. And it's a very simple way to kind of complement what I would call your more traditional tax parcel viewer applications that provide assessment and current tax information. Moving on, I want to show the next solution, which is My Local Representative. So many people in our community want to know who their current elected officials are. And I can either search for my address or maybe navigate the map and select a specific location. And My Local Representatives allows me to quickly drill through the kind of hierarchy of electoral geography and see who my city council members are. And in this case, there's an at-large council in Naperville, who county commission members are, state representatives, and even federal representatives as well too. It's a very, very simple way for you to provide access to that information and ultimately help members of your community progressively disclose more information about the elected representatives in their community. So that's My Local Representative, and that's a configuration of a web app template called Information Lookup. Continuing on the election theme, the next thing that's important to many organizations, many cities and counties who tabulate election results, is being able to share those election results with constituents in the community. And so the election results solution is a configuration of web app builder for ArcGIS that allows you to do that. Once again, I could search for an address or just simply tap on the map. And what this is doing now is identifying the precinct that that location is contained within and providing election results, in this case for the 2008 general election, for my community. And you could have, much like My Local Representative, you could have any one of a number of actual political contests contained within this solution offering. So that could be President of the United States, or even more local election contests like your county recorder. And ultimately, you could see then as well voter turnout for that community as well. So not only look at who won the specific election or the political contest in that location, but also what voter turnout looked like in the community. So those are a whole collection of a few solutions we have that really kind of take government information that you guys maintain and provide it in a very simple and straightforward way. The next thing I want to do before I turn it over to Allison is just show you a few solutions that help you provide that sense of place or provide that kind of consumer mapping experience. And the first one I want to show you is the drug drop-off locator. And what you'll notice recently, we've been developing a whole collection of locator solution offerings that really help you guys provide that sense of place. So rather than just giving people a set of map layers and allowing them to search for location, these locator applications really allow you to provide that sense of place and help people kind of with that kind of consumer mapping experience. So I could just poke on the map here and set my location. And what this is going to do now is find the nearest drug drop-off location for me and present within a given distance, in this case 2 miles, where those drop-off facilities are, give me some more details about that facility, and then ultimately provide some driving directions as well too if I'd like to navigate to that location. And so real quickly, much like the consumer mapping experiences that we provide, or that we're all used to using, I should say, and that we support in many cases, right? This is a great way to kind of provide your local context and that sense of place for not only drug drop-off, this could be parks, government facilities, and other types of offerings. Staying within that same vein, let's talk next about the election polling places solution. So this is a configuration of Web App Builder that's very similar to some of those locator apps, but it's slightly different. I can search for an address or poke on the map, and what it's doing now is actually finding a precinct that location's it resides in that I poked on the map there, and ultimately giving me the corresponding polling place. So in this case, I can see in one integrated view exactly which polling place I'm responsible for going to in that district or in that precinct more specifically. And much like the drug drop-off locator, right, I can give citizens in my community directions to that polling place. So this is different than the drug drop-off locator because it's really taking geographic boundaries, in this case precincts, correlating that with known locations in your community, the polling place, and then helping you provide that information to the community. So it's not so much which one's the closest, it's which one's the most appropriate. And a good example of that same configuration of Web App Builder for ArcGIS is the school locator. So I can come in here now and search for an address in my community. Let's just do East Franklin in Naperville. Once I search for that address, and now what this application is doing is actually providing for me all of the elementary, middle, and high school attendance zones. So much like the election polling place application where I was looking for precincts, this one's actually using school attendance zones to tell me which school my child will attend, and giving me directions to that if in fact that makes sense. I can also then begin to go look at middle school attendance zones as well too. So which junior high would my child attend, and finally even high school attendance zones, right? So I can see kind of the whole hierarchy of different attendance areas and which, if I were interested in purchasing that property, which schools my child might attend in the community. So let me just close then with kind of the final kind of pattern we see, and that is using story maps to provide a narrative around and kind of tell a story with your government information. And a great example of that is the opioid awareness story map that we covered in our last meetup. And so I won't spend a whole lot of time with this story map because I think many of you are probably familiar with story maps. But the great thing about the story maps medium is it's an excellent way for me to not only provide mapping information, but also a series of narrative that I don't necessarily get in those more focused applications, and ultimately bring that together in a comprehensive public engagement opportunity and public engagement offering for my community. And so the story map journal here allows me to go through and embed maps and other narrative, and maybe even further on, I could embed one of those locator applications like you saw with the drug drop-off locator as well too. And so this is a way to kind of provide a more comprehensive set of offerings to your constituents and ultimately tell a story around that. So that was a real quick overview of a whole collection of what I would call show me or public information offerings that are available with ArcGIS for local government. And each one of those are focused around either specific themes of information or services that the governments provide. and you can then configure them specifically to meet needs in your organization. So Heather, while I kind of take a break there and turn it over to Allison, do we have any questions that may have popped up?
There's one question from Charles. He
Okay.
was asking a question regarding routing. So
Mhm.
is routing for these apps costing service credits from our ArcGIS Online account if they deploy the apps?
That's a really good question. So the routing configurations in each of the solutions we showed are configurable, and you guys can choose how you'd like to configure them. You can use the ArcGIS routing services that are available, and they will consume some credits, but I would encourage you to take a look at that rate schedule because it's not a lot in the grand scheme of things. Um, the other thing you could do is also, if you have your own local routing service, you could configure it for that as well too. And so it's entirely up to you how you'd like to configure the apps. In some communities, they're not enabling the routing capabilities at all and just providing kind of that location-based information for citizens in their community. So it's a really kind of flexible for you, and you can choose what's the right deployment pattern.
And that's it for now.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Alison.
All right, thanks, Scott. So Scott's been showing ways that you can share information with the public, but public input has long been a part of government decision-making, at least here in the US. Traditionally, these civic engagement initiatives, things like collecting problem reports or gauging sentiment, assessing services in the community, and even things like engaging the public in maintenance operations, have taken the form of things like tip lines or report hotlines, even town hall meetings. But as we, as the population, have begun replacing our landlines and phone books with things like mobile devices, it makes sense that the government agencies are seeking ways to increase civic engagement that leverage the connectivity of their constituents. In some cases, these initiatives are taking the form of native apps, but like Scott's been showing, many of these are responsive web apps, which have the advantage of working across many devices without needing to support specific operating systems. And they work equally well on smartphones, tablets, and desktop computers. So let's take a quick tour of some of these responsive web apps that have been configured to help you engage the public as sensors in your community. We'll start with the Drug Activity Reporter. This is a configuration of Survey 123 for ArcGIS. It's intended for use by the general public to report suspected drug activity in a community, thereby helping law enforcement agencies to work hand in hand with the public to fight crime and to reduce neighborhood disorder. You can think of this as a geographically enabled PDF form or a digital supplement to your existing tip lines. Survey 123 helps submitters navigate complex forms to submit reports that can't be viewed by other members of the public. Next, let's take a look at an app that's designed to complement a comprehensive Vision Zero strategy. For those of you who aren't familiar with Vision Zero, the goals of this are to reduce pedestrian and cyclist fatalities and serious injuries that can result from collisions with motor vehicles. So a key component of this is feedback from the public on not just the actual collisions and the incidents, which are often reported through other means, but also things like near misses. And this feedback, along with that crash data, can be analyzed and used to educate the community, to devise new enforcement methods, and to promote land use and engineering practices that reduce these transportation-related injuries. So using this configuration of the Crowdsource Reporter web app template, the general public can come in and submit their own reports of incidents and near misses that have occurred. But they can also interact with reports that have been submitted by others, either by providing their own comments on the incident, maybe the same thing happened to them at the same location or they witnessed the incident, or even just by simply saying that they agree with this. Maybe it was a suggestion of a change that needed to be made. So in this way, the general public can report and be aware of transportation hazards in their community, dangerous traffic behaviors that are occurring on roadways, and they can do it from any device and from just about anywhere. So far, we've seen two examples of apps that are designed to collect very specific types of crowdsourced feedback, but sometimes it doesn't make sense to have individual apps for each report type. So this is another configuration of that same Crowdsource Reporter application, but this time we've set it up as a citizen problem reporter. It's a one-stop shop for reporting a whole variety of issues. Think of this as a supplement for that center section of your phone book, if you remember those. But just like in that Vision Zero configuration, I can come in here, see, comment on, and otherwise interact with reports that have been submitted by other people, as well as submit a report of my own. In addition, because there's a bit more of a dialogue that goes on in this application, it's not just my comments or the comments of other people that would be visible, but also perhaps comments back from the city saying that they've addressed this issue or that it will be addressed at some known point in the future. And kind of keep tabs on my community and make sure that they are being responsive to the issues that I'm submitting. So let's pivot a little bit and take a look at how you can solicit specific input that can be used campaign style. Oh, hang on, sorry, I missed an app. It can be used more campaign style to identify broader trends in your community. And this is the PhotoSurvey application, which presents a randomized series of geotagged photos from around the community. Each photo is accompanied by a brief survey. I sign in here. By a brief survey designed to identify problems such as blight, damaged structures, or illegal construction activity. And this randomized approach allows volunteers or engaged members of the public to review a sampling of the properties from across the community, thereby helping you to identify regions or maybe neighborhoods that may require more attention. This app includes a degree of gamification as well, for those who are driven by achieving goals. If I come and look at the profile of this user, you can see that I have achieved an intermediate level 3 rating. And as I complete more surveys, my levels will increase and I'll move up the ranks of submitters. This PhotoSurvey application is a JavaScript application that runs on premises, and it leverages location-enabled photos that can be produced by many commercially available cameras. As well as the app, the solution here includes tools that also simplify the data processing so that you can collect and process these street-level photos on a regular basis. So I'm going to come back and quickly talk about this public comment application. This is a configuration of the Crowdsource polling web app template, which, like the Crowdsource Reporter app, allows you to come in and comment and vote for things that are going on in your community. In this case, we have the application set up for a land use public comment type workflow. Many local governments have a requirement that any changes to land use designations require a period of public comment. So this is an app that's designed to sort of support that workflow. Unlike in Crowdsource Reporter, I can't come in here and draw in my own shapes. I can only interact with features that have been published by an authoritative source such as the city. Our final stop on this list of public sensor apps again encourages a slightly different form of community participation. This is Adopta. Adopta is designed to not only get members of the community involved in reporting issues, but also to engage them in maintaining their community by adopting assets, things like catch basins or fire hydrants or trails, or I've even seen people do this with natural features like streams. This configuration of Web App Builder uses email to establish communication with the adopters. So if I provided my email and clicked sign in, I would get an email like this, where I can access the application as an authenticated user. But I don't even need to do that necessarily, because I can interact with all of the assets I've adopted right here from this email, perhaps marking that I've cleared this hydrant of snow, or in the summer that I've mowed and trimmed around it so it's not hidden by weeds. If I click that sign in link, it takes me in here to this view of the application where I can adopt additional assets. So let's take a quick break before I dig into how these data collection workflows can fit in with the rest of your organization's operations, and what tools are included with those solutions to help triage and monitor incoming reports. Are there any questions, Heather?
So
Oh, did you want to finish something?
Sorry, Heather. I just want to, Allison, I thought you said something really interesting up front. And I just wanted to kind of draw a sharp point on it. You showed configuration of drug activity reporter, which was using Survey 123, I should say. Survey 123 for ArcGIS.
Yep.
You kind of mentioned an interesting point, is that the great thing, or the real valuable aspect of Survey 123 is it's great for form-based entry, and it also allows you to quickly take input. But the other distinction you made that I wanted to make sure everyone was kind of clear about, right, is that there's no way for people to see, in this case, what others have reported, or even have a further dialogue, which is why, you know, you kind of think about then the Crowdsource Reporter application and how that allows you to not only submit but also then begin to comment. And so I know one of the questions we get a lot, and I'm just kind of framing the conversation a bit, is that which app do I pick? Do I pick Crowdsource Reporter, Crowdsource Polling, Survey 123, Geoform? And maybe you could just spend a minute to talk about that, and just, kind of give your comments and thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
That is a comment or a question that we get from users all the time. Esri has all of these data input applications out there, and which one do you choose for each workflow? So that's one of the things that Scott and I are trying to demonstrate through this presentation today, is not just that we've covered this whole scope of workflows, but also that we've been really thoughtful about which pieces of technology we've chosen to use for each of those. So Drug Activity Reporter, yeah, like Scott mentioned, this is private information that you're submitting, whereas something like Citizen Problem Reporter or the Crowdsource Reporter app is much more about citizens engaging not just with the city or with the organization, but also with each other and having a conversation that way. So the information that's submitted here should be designed to be public information so that you can sort of stimulate that conversation. So that's one benefit to using the Crowdsource Reporter apps if you're looking for that level of engagement. You don't necessarily want that, though, for something like drug activity reporting. Right. Public comment is less about the conversation between constituents as it is the conversation and just being very transparent about what's happening between the city or the organization and the public. So there's still some conversation going on, obviously, between the public, but you're soliciting feedback on a specific thing. They're not providing their own features to comment on.
No, that's really good. And the one we didn't show that I was going to mention earlier and just forgot too is kind of an adaptation of PhotoSurvey, which is the 3D public comment application, which really allows people to kind of use 3D scenes and 3D representations of maybe new proposed developments. And then much like public comment does in a 2D sense, also allow you to comment on that new proposed development as well too. So there's lots of alternatives and opportunities for you guys to leverage the different solutions we have at very specific workflows. That's good, Allison. Thanks. I just wanted to kind of drive a finer point on that.
Yeah, no problem. Heather, you said there was a question that had come in?
There are a couple, actually. Kirk's question is, can the Citizen Problem Reporter be linked to an asset management system or code enforcement app?
Yes. That will be part 2, and then Billy's also going to touch on that, so I'm not going to dig into an answer to that question right now. If so I don't answer your question in the next part, come back.
Okay. Allison had 2 questions. The first one is regard to what level of web content accessibility guidelines or accessibility compliance has been added to the configurable app templates, because their city compliance is required for all external facing applications.
To be completely honest, the web app templates that I've shown so far this morning, Reporter, Polling, are not particularly accessible. But, huge but, that is the #1 thing that we're going to be working on in 2018 with these apps. Mm-hmm. We know it's an issue. Esri as a whole is putting together more specific guidelines for all of its applications, and yeah, we're working on it.
Okay. Another question, also from Allison, for the public comment template, sorry, can't speak today. Can you have documents associated with the land use change, for example, a CAD drawing or design?
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't actually get into that in the demo, but in this case, this Springbrook Square plan that they've proposed, here's kind of the short form of the change, but if I click on the attachments link, I can download a PDF to a much more detailed description of what's going on. And that's just an attachment on a feature service. So you could put whatever type of file you wanted in there that's supported by ArcGIS for attachments, which is just about everything normal.
Okay. Jack's question, doesn't Survey 123 require a named user?
No, it does not anymore. I'm signed into this browser right now just because I happen to be, but now I'm signed out and I'm not authenticated as anybody, and I still have access to this survey. It used to require a named user.
Yep.
Okay. Jill's question, with the large amount of data collected from the public, how would you verify the data and respond to it?
I'm going to get into a little bit more detail on that in the next session or in the next part of this presentation. We have applications to help support those workflows as well.
Okay. And I may be pronouncing your name incorrectly, Asmita. How do I approach or get my community development department in the city to use these apps? How come my city uses none of the platform? I'm a consultant firm and would like some help. I don't know how we can approach that, but
You want me to take that one, Nelson?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I think there's a couple tips we can give you. One is what you saw today is so far you've seen, right, is that the solutions are a series of configurations of ArcGIS that are really organized around key workflows in a local government. So Allison showed everything from, kind of taking drug activity reports from the community to help drive law enforcement activities, or maybe moving into kind of the more traditional planning and code enforcement aspects, like how do I take what historically was a call for a code enforcement violation, extend that to the web. So if you really think about kind of the key workflows in a city or county and the services that they deliver, you'll find that the ArcGIS for Local Government Solutions are organized around those things. And so that's a very simple way to kind of pave the conversation, right? To kind of say, look, I have an app that'll help you, or a configuration of ArcGIS that will help you solve that specific problem and provide additional services. We're not sure why your community's not using, or the community you reference isn't using our software fully, but we'd love to help you do that. So I think, getting a dialogue started with the local account team who works that area is probably the appropriate place to start. And certainly they can help you kind of frame the offerings that are available with ArcGIS and the value it provides. And ultimately that local account team can also help you as a consultant who may want to help the community move forward as well too. So there's a lot of opportunity, and I think you can either reach out to us directly through the meetup, and we'll kind of put you in touch with the right people, or just email one of us directly.
that is all the questions for now.
All right. We'll flip back to slides then for a minute. So it's very easy to show and talk about the front-end apps for all of these public engagement and crowdsourcing applications, but as several of the questions brought up, realistically, these are just the tip of the iceberg of these workflows. So in order to maximize the value from the data collected through these apps, you need to be able to effectively receive, review, and respond to these incoming reports. So included with many of the solutions I just showed are a whole series of apps, scripts, and tools that are designed to do just that. And I'm going to use the Citizen Problem Reporter solution to demonstrate what I mean, but just about everything I'm about to show you is applicable across all the apps that I've shown as well. So let's start with a map of the process, and then I'll walk through it with the actual components as well. So far today, we've talked about this piece right here, how the public can submit various types of reports. But once that report has been submitted, someone, such as an operations manager, needs to be able to work with that report, to review the incoming information to determine if it requires further action, prioritize it, maybe even assign it to someone else for further work. So for this, we have configurations of a web app template called Crowdsource Manager. We also have Operations Dashboard to help you view, get a more operational view of all of these incoming reports. A key component of this piece of the map is communication. So how do you notify that operations manager that a new report has come in? How do you acknowledge receipt of that report back to the person who originally submitted it? For that, over the summer, we released a Python script that will do exactly that. It handles email notifications, and you can configure the level of information you'd like to communicate and who those emails are going to. A lot of the applications I showed also allowed users to put public information out there, or to put information out there publicly. It was public comment information, which, as anybody who's ever worked with data like that knows, requires some level of moderation to handle any inappropriate, explicit, or even just sensitive information that gets submitted through that medium. So to help with that, we have another Python script that can be configured to scan all incoming reports against a list of words or partial words. And basically, if anything is found that is deemed to be inappropriate, it turns off the public visibility of that incoming report until it can be reviewed by somebody internally to determine if it is actually a valid comment or something that's not particularly helpful to the conversation. Another Python script that we have released, or that will be released actually in a couple of weeks to kind of help with this workflow, is our new geographic assignment Python script. So assignment of an issue may depend on where that issue is located, at least internally. So for example, as a member of the public, I personally don't really care if a pothole is located on a road that belongs to the town, the county, or the state. I just want to report it so that it can get fixed. But obviously that geographic information is very important when determining who is going to respond to that report. So when it's released, this script will populate attributes on that report, on that incoming report, based on attributes in coincident polygons, which will allow you to assign reports based on their geography or redirect reports based on their geography. Next up is another tool that is already out there for you to use. This generate ID Python script will generate identifiers in a format of your choice for new reports. If you've ever worked with the Attribute Assistant add-in in ArcMap, this works very similarly. It basically just creates an ID based on an incrementing value that provides the person who submitted the report with a means of referring to it if they ever need to contact you regarding that report at a later date. And finally, we have this last box here, which is actually a whole series of tools. They're still in development, but once completed, they're going to open up a whole new level of connectivity to the rest of your organization. These are ETL tools that will help to transfer all of these incoming reports to the systems that you're already using for responding to incoming reports. Billy is going to touch on this one a little bit more in a moment, but we just released a beta version of a script that connects Citizen Problem Reporter to Cityworks. We're working on one that will be released in a couple of weeks that connects to Workforce, and we've worked with other organizations like Lucity to set up similar ETL workflows to their systems. Scripts like these allow you to pass information from the incoming reports onto dispatchers, field workers, and others who need that information, and to return their updates to the original report so that they can be viewed in the reporter application. And then from there, the circle of information can be completed, perhaps by using the email notification tool to fire off an email to the original reporter, letting them know that their issue has been addressed. Okay, so that's enough slides and concepts. Let's go take a look at how all this works in practice. So come into my reporter application. I'm going to wear a couple different hats through this presentation. So first off, I'm going to start as a member of the public. And I've noticed that there's a street light out at the intersection at the end of my street. So I'm going to pull up my community's Citizen Problem Reporter app to let them know of the issue. In this case, I'm actually going to sign in using my Twitter account. So it's a street light that's out. I'm going to come in and report a road problem. If I zoom into my neighborhood here, I can see that this issue has not been reported by anybody else. So I'm going to submit a new report. Say damaged streetlight right here at this intersection. I'll point out that it's very dark. Provide my name. Skip phone number. I'll put my email in here because I want to be notified of any updates to this. Today's date is fine. I don't need to search because I dropped a point on the map, and I'll just say report it. And just that easily, I've let my city know of the issue. Now in the background, I have a whole series of scripts that are running that are going to update information. So if you think back to this map that I showed here in PowerPoint, I have all of these scripts set up to run in the back end, and I'm just going to talk here for a minute while they all run. What these are doing is they're going to go through and they're going to generate an ID on that report that was created. They're going to make sure that I didn't say anything I shouldn't have in that report. They're going to calculate the district that that report belongs to. And they're also going to fire off a series of emails. I can show you what these emails look like. So the first email that's going to get fired off is one to the person who's responsible for addressing that report. And it's going to be an email that looks something like this, just letting them know that a broken or damaged street light has been reported, and also the address at which it was reported. Because one of the things that Reporter does is it actually does a reverse geocode on the location of the report and calculates an address. And it's going to give me the ID of that report that was calculated. The second email that's going to get sent is one that looks something like this, and that's going to get sent to the person who's responsible, or the person who submitted the report. So this is just a quick thank you that acknowledges that the report was received by somebody and it didn't just disappear off into space of the internet. The scripts always run more slowly when you're presenting live. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come over into my Crowdsource Manager application and change my hats. So this isn't an application that would typically be visible to the public. This is something that would be used internally for triaging and reviewing these reports as they come in. So in this case, I'm going to go look at the road complaints that have come in, because I just got an email that let me know that there was a new one. And one thing I would like to point out that's been heavily requested for this application that is coming in a couple of weeks in the next release of ArcGIS Online is the ability to link directly to specific features, specific reports in Crowdsource Manager. And that is coming in the next couple of weeks. So what you'll be able to do is actually build a URL into that email to the manager so that they can click on it and open this application directly to that report. In this case, here's that report that just came in. It was very dark, street light that was broken. And I can come in here, view some details of the report. There's the request ID that was generated by the ID script. And here's the district that was calculated based on where that report was located in the city. So I can come in here, I've reviewed this. It is indeed an issue that needs to be fixed. I'm going to mark it as received. And in doing that, it's actually going to fire off another script in the background that is going to go and copy this feature into a layer that's in my workforce application. So that's running there in the background. It'll take just a few seconds to run. So what's happened here is that that report has come in from the public. It's been reviewed by somebody internal in my organization. There, you just saw it pop in. And now I've passed it out to my field workers, and I can assign somebody to go and actually address that issue. Once it's been addressed, they can either update the status of that using their collector application, or if there's other internal systems at play, they can actually pass it back to me, where I can come into my reporter application and perhaps mark this issue as completed. In doing so, maybe that sends off another email back to the reporter letting them know it's been addressed. But even if I don't have that set up, I can come back in here at any point into my reporter application if I put back on my member of the public hat again. Come back in here, sign in. And in this case, rather than going back to road problems, I'm going to come in here and look at my submissions. And I can see that this damaged or missing streetlight is now completed. And the view that I'm looking at here is all of the issues that I've submitted across all of the maps. So I can very quickly come in and basically see how responsive the city is being to my particular issues that are important to me. Another way of looking at this would obviously be to show it in an operations dashboard view. I don't have one of those configured today, but I know that Billy's going to show you one in a minute. Because really all this is information that's stored in a feature layer, which means it's accessible throughout my entire organization. Anything that's using ArcGIS Online feature layers can consume this information. So just to reiterate kind of the whole workflow that happened here. As a member of the public, this whole workflow has let me easily notify my city where there was an issue, and I was able to stay informed on the progress of my reports, both through emails and by coming into the application to be able to see the updates. As the operations manager, I was able to pass that information throughout my organization, and using Operations Dashboard, I could even visualize the effectiveness of the organization at handling all of these incoming reports. So with that, I'm going to now hand it over to Billy to show off a little bit of how you can accomplish the same workflow, but using a system such as Cityworks. We connected up with Cityworks earlier in 2017. We shared customers who were really interested in taking this citizen problem reporter workflow and using it as their public-facing data collection mechanism. But they used Cityworks in the back end, so they wanted to be able to integrate that information and sort of pass the reports back and forth between the two systems. So we worked together and wrote a Python script that would do exactly that. And now Billy is going to show you what that all looks like in practice.
All right, thank you, Allison, and thanks for having me here today. So like Allison said, we're going to start off in the Crowdsource Reporter application, which you should see on screen. And I'm not going to go through the whole entering all the information. We're just going to go ahead and submit it. You know, you can see I've added an attachment and I've marked my location. So we'll go ahead and just click report it. So by clicking report, what happens here is a script is run, one of the scripts that Allison mentioned, which is available to all of our clients and others as well, that then goes ahead and actually creates the service request in Cityworks from the Crowdsource report. So let's go over here and look at Cityworks. Allison also mentioned that I was going to show a Esri dashboard, our operations dashboard, and here's one in our inbox. Our inbox is essentially the Cityworks ops dashboard, and we can integrate directly with the Esri ops dashboard. So I'm in what we call Cityworks Respond. I've gone ahead and switched my tabs here, and let's go back over here, and I'm just waiting for that script to run and there's my new request. So the new request the report was taken in Crowdsource Reporter from a citizen, and then in Cityworks, it was received into my inbox where I can see that new request. I can go ahead and open it up. And I have all the information that came over from Crowdsource in terms of the location information, the incident information, who my caller was, the caller name, as well as the attachment. So it took a picture of the leaky hydrant. There's also a comment that was made, which is included here as well as the report details. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and confirm that yes, this is an actual leaky hydrant, and we're going to go out and send someone out to investigate it. So if I switch over my map, you can see it located my request. I can go ahead and create the Cityworks work activity. And in Cityworks, we create work activities directly against the assets you define in your GIS. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select that fire hydrant. It's going to save it to the session. And then back from my service request, I'll actually go ahead and create a new work order. Doing it this way, it actually links the service request to the work order, so I have that complete operational awareness throughout my organization for this particular work activity. There's my asset. I'm going to go ahead and choose my work activity. We'll call it a fire hydrant maintenance, fire hydrant repair work order. Again, it pulls in all my information, and then we're going to go ahead and say create. So at this point, we're creating the Cityworks work order, or the Cityworks work order, and what we have is some what we call webhooks that are actually being triggered. We've configured it so that whenever this particular work activity type is created, a webhook is fired that then creates a activity, Cityworks work assignment in the workforce for ArcGIS application. So what I can do now is go over to my workforce for ArcGIS, and we'll go over and refresh this. And what we'll see in our dispatcher role now, all of our assignments, including that new assignment that was just created. And it's right, let's see here, let's sort on status. There we go. And here's our new fire hydrant repair at 3791 Equestrian Court. I can go ahead and select it. And one of the great things about Workforce is you can see where your workers are in relation to any work, as well as what their status is. So you get a good location information. And I'm going to go ahead and assign this one to myself. As Allison did, I'm playing multiple roles in this scenario. So I've assigned the work activity to myself, which now makes it available in the Workforce for ArcGIS application. So at this point, I'm going to switch over from my desktop application to my iPad. And it just takes a moment here to switch screens. And here we are in the Workforce for ArcGIS app. while in the app, I can go ahead and you just need to refresh it here. So I can get my new, there we go. There it is. There's my new assignment, which allows me to select it. It's going to center in on it. It's an Esri application, so of course I have access to all that same GIS data that I have in Cityworks. Cityworks uses the Esri GIS at its core. So I could go out, I can perform whatever maintenance I need to on this, and then when it's time to actually record the activity, like how much time it took me to fix this hydrant, were there any materials used, what are all the costs associated with performing this activity, I can easily app link over to my Cityworks application. So using the app link, we're going to do a quick sync, which is essentially taking the newly created or this activity and making sure it's on my mobile device. And once this sync finishes, here I'm in that same work activity that we originally created in Cityworks, the Office application in Respond, and is now available to me here on my mobile device. You can see the comments were carried over. The asset is here. I can go ahead and say I completed my work on that asset. I can add in a little bit of time. How long did it take me to do this? We'll just say it took an hour. And then finally, we had a couple tasks. So I'm going to go ahead and say I completed my tasks. And then while we're done, we're going to go ahead and complete it. As simple as that. And all I have to do is sync everything back up. And we'll transition back to our, I can find the way to transfer back. A moment here. There we go. And we'll transfer back to the actual Cityworks Respond app again, where we're in that same work activity. I'm just going to refresh it. And you can see that my work has been completed. Now at this point, I can review, make sure all my everything was completed correctly, and then all we're left to do is close this work order. So we'll go ahead and close the work order, which also closes the Cityworks service request. And we'll look at that here in a moment, which is also going to then complete the workforce activity as well as close out that or complete that Cityworks or the crowdsource report that we started. So here is our request, also a close status. I can come over to my workforce. You see it's been completed. And then if we log back in, and I'll just do it as a guest this time quickly. Based on my configuration, how a crowdsource reporter configured, I can come in and view all my work here. And here's my hydrant problem is completed. All right, that's all I have. Thank you, Allison.
Thanks, Billy. That was really good. That was a great illustration of how you can connect ArcGIS to a comprehensive work order management system and really kind of round out the work activity that needs to be done to address these questions that are coming in from constituents. Bill, you got a minute to take just a few questions that came up during your presentation? Heather, why don't we hit them with them now?
Sure. One question is the script using Cityworks API to communicate back and forth?
Do you want me to take that one?
It is.
Go for it.
Sure. It depends on which part we're talking about. The Esri script with the connect to Cityworks Esri script is actually doing the creation of the work activity in Cityworks. And then we have some webhooks which use the Cityworks APIs to create the work activities, the work orders and such in Cityworks.
And even in that script, yes, we are leveraging the Cityworks API and the ArcGIS API for Python. Both of them are working together to extract that information from the Esri layer and to write it out in a format that can be read by Cityworks.
Allison has a question. I've been trying to locate the GP tools that was mentioned by Allison in the presentation. For example, moderate content. Should I be able to find these on the local government website?
Yes, the scripts can be downloaded
Mhm.
from the Solutions site. So if you go to solutions.arcgis.com and search for the Citizen Problem Reporter or the Crowdsource Reporter or any of the solutions that make use of those applications, under Get Started, Additional Help, here's the information on downloading and setting up the scripts for generating IDs, moderating the reports, and sending the email notifications. And in the presentation, I mentioned a couple of scripts that we're in the process of working on right now for the geographic attributes and the connections to Cityworks and Workforce. Those scripts will all appear in the same area once they're released.
There's one more question from Jackie. It's a question basically regarding survey 123 that hopefully we can answer. She was wondering how she might be able to use it for community health assessment to get more detail on where community respondents lives in more detail by the zip code. Is that something that Scott or Allison that you
Yeah,
guys can answer?
so a couple things, Jackie. Why don't you send me a note and I'll connect you up with some folks on the health team and they can talk specifically about that health assessment. But also, yeah, I mean, certainly there are a lot of help or learn.arcgis.com and other kind of videos online to help with Survey 123 and configuring that. Survey 123 also has a real vibrant community of community-based surveys that have already been developed and kind of shared with the product that you could use as starting points. A good example of a more complicated survey that was done is one that Chris Fox on our team did, and we talked about last month about the sheltered homeless counts and unsheltered homeless counts for the biannual census for the homeless. So that's a good example of a more complicated one, but definitely we can connect you up with some folks and they can talk about how you might be able to leverage Survey 123 to do that specific assessment for sure.
Okay. That's all the questions for now.
Okay, so let me just wrap with a few slides and then we can take any final questions that are there. So we showed you, actually, let me just back up a minute. Let me get rid of this. So we showed you today a whole collection of public engagement applications, everything from kind of sharing public information and helping the general public find amenities and assets in your community. Allison and Billy did a great job showing how you can leverage that public engagement and drive action in your community. And one of the final patterns we wanted to touch on briefly is that one of the things we're seeing emerge is kind of these destinations that are being used to help you share a whole collection of apps and data and either measure and demonstrate progress on these initiatives. And there's some really good examples out there from like Iowa State DOT and my old friends at Oakland County, Michigan, where they're actually leveraging ArcGIS open data and a whole collection of apps to provide a public engagement destination for their community. And so if you want some more details on that, we can certainly try to address that with you. But I would just encourage you to take a look at what Iowa DOT has done specifically, and even folks like Oakland County, Michigan. And there's other examples out there as well, too, that we know of where they're creating these destinations and not only sharing the apps, but also the data that's driving those applications and even demonstrating how you're measuring progress and accountability as well in that kind of single destination. So to close, we just wanted to kind of leave you with what we've been working on and kind of where we're going with the public engagement offerings. And we talked a lot about some of this already today. Allison mentioned several enhancements that we've been making recently to the crowdsourcing solutions, and we continue to enhance those offerings based on the feedback you guys are giving us. And all of those enhancements go into the core ArcGIS Crowdsource Reporter and Crowdsource Manager and even Crowdsource polling applications. And then we use those applications in the configurations and the solutions that we showed you today. So there's all kinds of work we've done around theming and branding, being able to attach documents to comments and maybe even photos to comments, and even maybe being able to restrict where people can report observations and problems in a community. Allison highlighted and Billy even showed it, with Cityworks, how that we're developing these scripts to kind of extend the workflows that those applications provide and help you integrate other parts of ArcGIS and other business systems you guys use. And ultimately, we've been developing a whole new set of public engagement solution offerings around participatory budgeting, the homeless activity reporter, and we showed you drug activity reporters today. But we continue to evolve the offerings and at the same time simplifying the deployment approach. So most of the solutions we showed you guys today, you could deploy with a single click with the new ArcGIS Solutions deployment tool. And we're continuing to grow and evolve the offerings. Allison alluded to this, and we are very serious about it, right? One of the big things we have on our plate for early next year is starting to work on accessibility, and even starting to think about the next generation of the crowdsourcing apps. So it's a great time for you guys to kind of leverage the solutions that are there. And if you're interested in kind of driving feedback and driving the next generation of what these crowdsourcing apps will be, I would encourage you to reach out to Allison and kind of talk through your experiences with the apps and, you know, capabilities you'd like to see or things you'd like to see change within those apps. It's a really good time to do that because we're beginning to think about what these apps will look like 2 and 3 and 4 years from now. We're going to continue to grow the scripts that kind of extend those workflows. And in December, we'll ship the geographic assignment and the workforce for ArcGIS integration. If any of you are Cityworks users that are on the meetup today, you know, certainly I'd encourage you to reach out to your Cityworks account representative if you're interested in kind of integrating Citizen Problem Reporter with your Cityworks implementation. We're ready to work with you on that. And you'll see updated and enhanced solution offerings, you know, with some of our longtime solutions like Park Locator and Events Calendar, even things like Site Selector and Live Work Locate and Land Use Inquiry. So we're constantly evolving the existing solutions to make them easier for you to deploy and to help you take advantage of new offerings in ArcGIS. And at the same time, adding new offerings. In December, we'll have some new public crime maps and warming and cooling centers to help you inventory those. We talked earlier this fall about the enhancements we're making to public notification and even beginning to reach out and provide additional offerings beyond the Vision Zero example that Allison showed today, to help you kind of visualize crash information and collision information and things like a high injury network locator or fatal and serious crash dashboard. So we'll continue to grow and evolve the solutions and extend the ones we have. And ultimately, we're also working closely with the ArcGIS Hub team on a set of initiatives that really help you take advantage of the new Hub product offering, and begin to develop initiatives and our solutions within those initiatives, specifically in homelessness, opioids, vector-borne diseases, and even other initiatives we're beginning to think about around property value, capital improvements, and other kind of major initiatives that you undertake in your community. So we'll just continue to grow these things, and your feedback will really help us drive the next generation of apps that are available. So with that, Heather, I think we're all set on all the content we have today, and certainly we can open it up for any questions that may exist from folks in the audience.
Sure. Yeah, there's 2 questions. So one, is there integration available for Cartograph?
So it's a good question. We have talked to the guys at Cartograph. We don't have anything on the shelf, but I would encourage you to connect directly with them because I do know they were working on something as well.
Okay. And Cassidy has a question of the estimated release for public notification 2.0.
Yeah, so the 2.0 release will go out in the December ArcGIS Online. The widget actually will go out in the December ArcGIS Online release, and we'll follow up with a new solution for public notification in our January release. So that's right around the corner.
Great. I believe that is it. So I'll go ahead and wrap things up. So thanks everybody for joining us for today's meetup, and this is our last meetup of this year. I hope you enjoyed attending and all the content that we presented throughout the year. We look forward to seeing and hearing from you next year, and I hope everybody has a great holiday. And until then, have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, all.